So now in this video let us study about simple interest. So suppose the bank is giving you 30,000, or bank simply doesn't give you, you went and asked the bank. So the bank gave you 30,000 rupees for 3 years, okay, for 3 years. Now, so after 3 years you'll have to give the money back, and the bank says bank charged a fees of 2%. Because you're keeping bank's money, bank charged a fees of 2% every month. Okay, every month, sometimes it is difficult, so sometimes the bank charges every year. Both are there, okay, month and year, both charges, type of chargings are there. So the bank, let us consider year, 2% every year. 2% of what? 2% of this thing. Okay, 2% of the money that you borrowed, that is a fees. Remember, it is a fees on the money that you keep. The money that you keep is 30,000. Okay, so you took it for 3 years. So on for this, let's see what happens at each year. This is the first year, second year, third year. So let us look in a closer way what happens in each of these years. So the first year you had to pay 2% of 30,000, that means 2% of the money you borrowed, and 2% of 30,000 is, it is 2% into 30,000. Okay, and 2% into 30,000, if you calculate, you will get it as 600 rupees. Fine. Now what happens in next year? Second year, again you have to pay 2% of your borrowed amount, that is 2% of 30,000. Now that is 2% into 30,000, which is 600 rupees. Again the next year what happens? 2% of, that is final year, third year, you have to pay again 2,000, sorry, 2% of 30,000, which is 600 rupees. So what do you see? You had 30,000 rupees, and now you have to pay 600 rupees, 600 rupees, 600 rupees as the fees every year. Fees because you're keeping the money. Now, and because you took it for 3 years, if you took it for less than 3 years, you would have paid only less fees. Now, what happens at last? How much money do you give back to the bank? After 3 years, when you give the money, how much have you totally paid? 30,000 plus 600 the fees for the first year, 600 the fees for the second year, 600 the fees for the third year. So totally you're giving back how much money? 31,800 rupees. Remember to put the rupees sign whenever you write it, please. Okay, now, so you borrowed 30,000 from the bank, but when you're giving back along with the fees, the total money that you will give back eventually is 31,800 rupees. Okay, now, so let me just recap it. 30,000 you borrowed, 2% every year is the fees that they charged. Total time you took it for was 3 years, and this is what happens each year, and then the total amount you paid back eventually. So this amount that you initially borrowed from the bank, it is called principal, not the school principal. It is this is the principal in financial matters. Okay, principal, this is the money which you borrowed in the beginning, and this thing, 2% every year, the fees that they charged is called interest rate. You would have already heard this, I guess, uh, from the elders. So it's called interest rate, and because they are saying the rate of interest, the rate is 2%, and that is the interest. What is the interest? The fees charged for keeping the money, keeping someone else's money. Okay, now, and this time of 3 years that we see, it is obviously called time itself. Okay, and then this 31,800, that is a final thing that eventually you're giving back to the bank along with the fees and along with what you borrowed. That is called amount, the total amount, or simply we might always call it amount. Okay, so this is the whole picture of what is happening. Now, this can not only be applied when you are taking money from the bank, it can also be applied when you are putting money into the bank. You have 30,000 rupees and you're giving the money to the bank for 3 years. The same thing happens. The bank will pay you interest. Bank will pay you and suppose it is 2% every year. The bank will pay you 600 rupees first year, 600 rupees second year, 600 rupees third year, and the bank will give you 31,800 rupees in the final year. I mean, at the end of everything. So totally, the bank will eventually pay you 31,800. So this works in both ways. Okay, either you put the money, either you give the money to the bank, or the bank gives money to you. This is the scenario that happens, and this type of charging fees is called simple interest. Now look at this. This is the advertisement of a bank called Bandhan Bank, and you look at this bank, you will see that, or you look at this advertisement, you see that. So you see the interest rate here, 8.04% for senior citizens and 7.65% for others. See, this is the interest rate. What we just saw some time back. And look at this, 2 years, 10 years. These are the time. You can choose the time. 2 years to up to 10 years. So the minimum you will have to take it for 2 years. The maximum you can take it for 10 years. That's what they meant. Now, so you get an idea of what is happening. Now let us look at another advertisement. This is advertisement of PNB Housing Finance Limited. Now look at this, 8.70% interest rate. So again, that is the rate of interest. So again, this is the usual thing that you see all over the banks. Now in the next video, we will see how to calculate the simple interest, and we'll see how to solve a problem with that.